The usual criticism of your position is that it was utopian, always was utopian, that we could not wage war like Romans because we're Americans, and the ruthlessness that you called for would not have been a possible option for us, and that it was always going to be messy, that it's a fantasy to think that you can wage a Roman-style quick war, bringing your opponent to a military defeat and then leaving, or leaving an administrative shell or something to run the place, but not having to linger in place and spend blood and treasure in an occupying force. How do you react to that?
Well, first of all, I mean, I just finished reading Gibbon, which took me forever, and the Romans didn't go in and then leave. They stayed, and they spent a lot of money and treasure, and they made walls and roads, and they tried to hold on to what they had. Secondly, I never, Norman Podhoretz said that I was ruthless, and just what you said, but I never said that. In fact, on September 12th, I published an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, and then subsequently, a month later, right before we're going into Afghanistan, saying we should go in and out. Mm-hmm. My recommendation was that we spend no more than 2 weeks in Baghdad, set up a strong man from the army. Mm-hmm. And now with hindsight, people say, oh, we shouldn't have disbanded the army. Set up a strong man with the army.
Or we should have at least discussed disbanding the army, since it was apparently more or less done on the say-so of Paul Bremer, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we should have disbanded the army, because that was essentially the backbone of the country. Had we done that, well, this was my plan. First of all, to go in much more strongly. A lot has been made about how this was record-setting speed and everything like that. I mean, if you actually look at the military history, that's a lie. It's simply a lie. Truscott moved faster from the south of France. Granted, he didn't have much opposition. The Third Army moved across France much faster. And the Israelis, moving through Gaza, which was urban, and the Sinai, the Mitla Pass, and the Gidi Pass, moved at 3 or 4 times the rate, fighting a far superior army on conventional terms than what they had. It was not record-setting at all. It was way too slow, partly because Rumsfeld decided to prove out the revolution in military affairs and did not put sufficient force in there to make it fast and decisive, real shock and awe. What I said was that we should go spend no more than 2 weeks there, and then set up someone compliant from the army. And these people live to rule. If we had told them that we'll be back soon, otherwise, but you have to do what we say, which is suppress your terrorists and behave internationally, would have been fine. Now, what I said then, and I'm on record, and among other things,
in the Claremont Review of Books, among other places,
exactly,
yes,
was wheel left. The American army was not meant to sit still. It was not meant to fight counterinsurgencies. That is not the American way of war, and it never should be. Wheel left. Hit Damascus, do the same thing. Then wheel south and east and occupy the Saudi military bases on the line between Saudi Arabia and Iraq, which we largely paid for anyway. And that way you'd be within 3 days, full strength of Baghdad, Damascus, and Riyadh. And you dictate to those regimes, by the way, we would not have lost many troops at all. There'd be no counterinsurgency. Our forces would not have suffered the damage that they did. Our backs would be to the sea, which we own. It was a modern, which we sort of own. I mean, it was a modern infrastructure there to support military stuff. We would not have been vulnerable in Korea or elsewhere. We've been lucky in that, and our publics would not have soured on the war, nor would even the Europeans, because we would have won it. And then you dictate to Damascus, Baghdad, and Riyadh that they behave, that they not support terrorism, and that in international relations they act like human beings. This we could have done, and it did not entail any ruthlessness whatsoever, and specifically not dealing with warfare among civilian populations. So I was far less ruthless, far more traditional in terms of military strategy than what I'm being criticized for.